Welcome back to Dom's Roundtable, my friends. In this video, we shall be delving into 10 more secrets of the Elden Ring DLC. You loved the first one and wanted more, and don't worry, I haven't blown my load on the first video. I've been doing a ton more testing and exploring since then, and I've got 10 more incredibly spicy hidden secrets and details for Shadow of the Erdtree. And we are starting off strong. Firstly, did you know that not all enemies are born equally? That is to say that, unlike the base game, the location of the enemy will affect their item drops, and this is directly tied into the lore. I've got a few examples of this mechanic, but I'll save one for later as it ties into another secret I have found. For now, I want to draw your attention to the 6 Mesmer soldiers patrolling around the wrecked corpse of this furnace golem just outside of Shadow Keep. As we know, due to the Furnace Keeper's note which is found here, these soldiers were tasked in some way with the care of the Furnace Golems. And the fact that he has felt the need to leave this note suggests that an incident or two may have cropped up in the past involving the Mesmer soldiers and fire pots, or, for goodness sake, flaming whirlwind pots. Well, these 6 soldiers in particular have definitely been up to some kind of shenanigans with the Furnace Golems, because they have a small percentage chance to drop an item that we believed was in limited quantity in the DLC. That's right, using these 6 soldiers you can infinitely farm the new epic crafting item, the Furnace Visage, thus allowing you to craft potentially the most powerful new crafting item in the game. However, as far as we're aware, no other soldiers in the game have a chance to drop this item. The one from the aforementioned note that allows you to produce flaming whirlwinds. Therefore, we can surmise that these soldiers, as most humans probably would do, read the note and decided to do the exact opposite. Just as if you see a button that says do not push, the first thing you want to do is push that button. So starting from the first Shadow Keep site of grace, you can easily head back down the lift, sprint over to these soldiers, and farm them as many times as you would like. Preferably with plenty of discovery enhancing gear and items equipped, and you can easily replenish your stock of this incredibly rare and incredibly powerful crafting material. This next secret revolves around the day-night cycle, and more specifically the moon, which is a much more prominent feature in the DLC than it was in the base game, having literal gameplay-altering changes, such as allowing you to use Tiolier's concoction on certain NPCs, and even creating pools of light which will cause previously inaccessible items to appear. Of course, you already knew all of this as I covered it in my first secrets video. I wanted to expand on that and do a bit of testing for you. As you may or may not know, a full day-night cycle in Elden Ring is 1 hour. And certain things can happen at certain points throughout the night and day, such as the walking mausoleums falling asleep. Well, I wanted to confirm just how intuitive and clever these new pools of moonlight were, and I can now confirm that as soon as it hits midnight or morning, the pools will appear and disappear in front of your eyes, along with the items that were there. So if you happen to time your exploration very, very poorly, you could be sprinting towards one of these pools, only to see the item disappear in front of your eyes. If this has happened to you and you had no idea why up until this point, it is because sunrise has just broke and the moonlight is no longer there, lighting your path. So all you'll need to do is rest at the site of grace, make it nighttime again, and you will be able to loot the now hidden larval tear. This next secret will take us to the Abyssal Woods. When you first enter this area, you will be greeted by all manner of messages and notes, advising you to stay away, advising you to hide, and to not even attempt to fight them, because if they see you, you're already dead. These notes are haunting and terrifying, and honestly, it was one of my favourite moments of the game. This felt so Bloodborne, and it only got more and more Bloodborne as we progressed. Now, I don't know if the actual name of these enemies has been confirmed yet, but they are more or less the spitting image of Winter Lanterns from Bloodborne. If they see you, they will immediately start to inflict madness on you, and if they grab you, you are almost definitely dead. And initially at least, they are seemingly invincible. You can try fighting them with holy, with physical, with spells, with whatever you want, and you will deal 0 damage to them. However, through using one very simple gameplay mechanic, you can kill them. All you need to do is parry them once, and they then become vulnerable to all forms of damage and can be very easily killed. Most of them will drop a swollen grape upon death, a new and very, very rare crafting material. However, one in particular to the southwest of the Woodland Trail site of Grace will actually drop a brand new talisman. The Aged One's Exaltation, a talisman depicting the exaltation of the aging untouchable, whose head resembles a sprig of ripe grapes. This will raise your attack power when madness is triggered in the vicinity by yourself, an ally, or an enemy. Gift your madness to our Lord, bless our brethren with grapes, take care that they fully ripen. This whole area, the enemies, the item, everything about this is so atmospheric, so haunting, and so Bloodborne, and it's probably my favourite area in the game for this reason. Also, another quick fun fact for you before we move on. Unfortunately, even if you do kill all of the Winter Lanterns in this area, you are still unable to summon Torrent, as he is still too scared. I love you, Torrent, but what a coward. This next secret takes us to the peaks of the Jagged Mountains, and atop these mountains, Bale the Dread makes his home. As you are climbing these mountains, you are likely to loot a few dragon harpoons, which have a very powerful anti-dragon effect, and are incredibly effective at taking down Bale and the other lesser dragons in Elden Ring. Unfortunately, the harpoons themselves are pretty few and far between, and to craft them, even once you have found the cookbook, requires sharp gravel stones, which again seem pretty few and far between. However, if you come here to the Jagged Peak mountainside site of Grace, there will be a cluster of around 10 lightning slimes, slugs, blobs, I don't know exactly what their name is, but these guys. And you can actually farm them for sharp gravel stones. So you have now given yourself an endless supply of dragon harpoons. And the dragons in Elden Ring, both in the base game and in the DLC, just became that bit easier. For the next secret, I'm going to show you a small clip of which only a handful of people in the world will ever be able to replicate. This was active for a very, very small amount of time post-release, before the first patch came out. As many of you probably already know, the Black Knight at the Church of Consolation used to drop the Black Steel Great Shield, but that was very quickly patched and changed to the Greathammer. However, a few other things were changed as well, which you may not know about. If you would like a full list of these changes, please let me know, but I thought I would just share the most interesting one with you here today. You used to be able to apply Royal Knight's Resolve to Smithscript weapons, and when I put that on the Smithscript Greathammer, this happened. I hadn't even fully min-maxed this build yet, and I believe this damage could have gone even higher, with us dealing 15 to 20,000 damage from a really good range to pretty much every enemy type in the game. So, safe to say, I'm quite glad this was swiftly patched out. I don't particularly agree with ridiculously overpowered builds. These games are a challenge for a reason, it's half the fun. You don't get that sense of achievement if you've just one-shot something with 20,000 damage from throwing your hammer at them. But I must admit, it was very, very fun to be able to do. Next up is probably the most known secret on the list, but I would kick myself if I didn't share it with you, because I imagine at least a few people don't know this yet, and it will really, really help you. Obviously, at a certain point throughout your run, you will receive the message saying that somewhere a great rune has broken, and so too has a powerful charm. I'll come back and talk about that in more detail later. This secret is about the use of that rune when you do acquire it. Out the back of Shadowkeep, you can find and challenge the Erdtree avatar. Not a particularly scary boss at first, until you realise you have to crit this thing twice and kill it a total of 3 times before it will finally stay dead. However, when it does, not only do you receive its Remembrance, but you also receive Miquella's broken rune. At first, this rune seemingly has absolutely no purpose. However, during phase 2 of the final boss fight, should Radahn grab you and Miquella start speaking to you and charming you, exactly as the description of this rune says, you can use it to nullify the charm. This can be used infinitely and will need to be used every single time you are grabbed, because if you do not, the second grab will kill you, as Miquella will have fully charmed you and you will die of a stolen heart. So even if you aren't planning on exploring the entire game for your next playthrough, at least go and grab this rune to give yourself more of a chance during the final boss fight. For this next secret, we will now revisit something I mentioned earlier, about not all enemies being born equal. For this, we must look at the description of the Silver Horn Tender, specifically that final line. These trinkets were once symbolic of society's upper echelons. Now, this isn't just a fun bit of lore to add to the backstory of certain enemies that we see throughout the Realm of Shadow. This has a literal gameplay implication. Primarily, Silver Horn Tender are dropped by the shadow denizens of the Land of Shadow. The ones we see in Gravesite Plain, in Scadu Altus, and here in Belurat Settlement. However, only certain Shadow citizens will drop Silver Horn Tender, the ones who are from society's upper echelons. So, to give you 2 perfect examples, the ones we see directly outside of Belurat, leading up the stairs and into the castle, yet still outside, fending for themselves, out in the open world. You can kill as many of these as you like, and they will never ever drop a Silver Horn Tender. However, as soon as you enter through into the gates of the settlement itself and start to kill the shadow folk in here, you will see the Silver Horn Tender item drops pretty frequently, because these people were from society's upper echelons. And this is a theme that runs throughout the DLC, and it's such a powerful message that you literally will receive these highly valuable items only from certain people, depending on where you encounter them and where they lived. And things like this and the Furnace Visage makes me really curious and interested if anyone finds any more items like this that will help us to learn more of certain enemies' backgrounds. We mentioned this briefly earlier, but now let's talk about the implication of Miquella's Great Rune breaking. Exactly as this text says, so too has a powerful charm. The charm it's referring to is the hold that Miquella had over everyone, and this is evidenced very clearly through speaking to all of the NPCs. They now have their own minds and thoughts back, and their intentions and even the way they talk to you changes dramatically after this moment. There are 2 locations where you will trigger the Great Rune breaking. One is as you head towards Shadowkeep. In fact, it's roundabout on par with where you find the Mesmer soldiers that drop Furnace Visages. The other location is just northeast of Bonnie Village, just as you are entering into Scadu Altus East. And for this reason, you want to make sure you have definitely completed every NPC's questline up until this point before you move on. I do have NPC questline videos on the way. In fact, 1 or 2 of them will already be out by the time you hear this video. And the 2 main NPCs you want to make sure you have definitely progressed before you break this rune are both Arnsbach and Moor. Aside from that, there are dozens of activities and hundreds of items you can grab before breaking the Great Rune, and you definitely should, just to make sure you aren't missing anything. In fact, I have a full series dedicated to all of the most important things that you should do before you break the rune. One of the 3 parts is out so far, with part 2 coming out in just a couple of days, and I will be making this into a full video once it's done. So if you're interested, make sure you go check that out as well. And before we move on to the penultimate tip, talking about other things that you should check out, if you would like to be a part of these discoveries and all of this exploration, and if you would like me to share these secrets with you earlier than the rest of the world, then we have multiple channels in which you can do so. Firstly, and entirely for no extra charge, you can join my completely open, completely free Discord server. We have many channels in here where we are discussing Elden Ring all day, every day. So if any of this interests you and you would like to take part in the conversations, please join. I am active in there 24/7 and it would be lovely to hear from you. And secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, if you would like to go above and beyond to show your support for the channel, and thank me for my efforts while also getting something in return, if you sign up for my Patreon, you will get early access to all of my videos, along with many other benefits depending on the tier you opt for, including a private channel with me and even exclusive merch. So if the Discord or the Patreon are of any interest to you, links are down below, and for anyone that does engage and interact with these channels in advance, thank you so much. The second last secret I have for you today is something I'm hoping most people here don't know yet, purely for the sake of our opinion of you. At least, I'm hoping if you do know, you didn't find this out firsthand. I am of course joking, everyone is welcome here. However, did you know, for better or for worse, almost none of the NPCs in the DLC can be killed? So if you were hoping to kill one for a quick and easy win, say if you really wanted their weapon or their armor or their bell bearing, unfortunately for you, you're going to have to figure out the correct way to acquire this and actually engage with their quest lines. The one exception to this, however, is Egon, but I strongly advise you do not kill him because his questline is definitely one of my favorites. And for the more casual players among us, he is amazingly helpful in the Bale boss fight. And for the final secret in this video, staying on the topic of NPCs, have you noticed that a few of them are only summonable once you get inside of bosses' arenas in the DLC? Initially seems like a bit of a weird change, right, when I don't believe you ever did this in the base game. However, when you know the two main reasons why, it starts to make a lot more sense. Firstly, if you see a summon sign for an NPC inside of the boss's arena, that means this NPC is required for a quest, and I strongly suggest you summon them. There are, of course, alternative endings, so for instance, if you do opt to summon Hornsent for Mesmer, you will progress Hornsent's questline, but you will slightly alter Lady Leda's. But for the most part, if you do see a summon sign inside of a boss fight and you do want to do all of the quests, then make sure you summon them. And the secondary reason why this is because if you summon allies outside of a boss, whether it be real players or NPCs, when you step into that boss arena, it's going to significantly increase their stats, primarily their health. However, because these are required quest NPCs, it would be very mean of FromSoft to force you to fight a harder version of a boss just to progress the questline. Therefore, if you're already inside the boss fight and the boss fight has already begun, their health will not change when you summon the NPC. Therefore, it's more possible for all of us to complete all of the questlines. And with that, my friends, that is everything I had to share with you today. So all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.